with a little love and some tenderness. We'll walk upon the water, we'll rise above the mist, with a little peace and some harmony. We'll take the world together, we'll take them by the hand. 'Cause I got a hand for you. Oh, I wanna run with you. Yesterday, I saw you standing there. Your hair was down, your eyes were red. No comb, I touched your hair. I said, get up and let me see you smile. We'll take a walk together, walk the road a while. 'Cause I got a hand for you, I got a hand for you. I wanna run with you. Won't you let me run with you? Yeah. Hold my hand. Want you to hold my hand. Hold my hand. I'll make you do a place where you can be anything you wanna be, because I wanna love you the best that I can. See, I was wasted, and I was wasting time, till I thought about your problems, I thought about your craft, then I stood up, and then I screamed aloud. I don't wanna be part of your problems, don't wanna be part of your crowd, no. I got a hand for you, I got a hand for you. I wanna run with you. Won't you let me run with you? Hold my hand. Want you to hold my hand. Hold my hand. I'll take you to the promised land. Hold my hand. Maybe we can change the world, but I wanna love you the best that I can. Yeah. Let me run, won't you let me run? Want you to hold my hand. Hold my hand. I'll take you to a place where you wanna be. And where you wanna be, because oh, no, 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 no. Hold my hand. Want you to hold my hand. Hold my hand. I'll take you to a promised land. Maybe we can change the world, but I wanna love you the best that I can. Oh, best that I can.
Well, hello, and thank you all for joining the party. I am Noah Finz, and on behalf of Christine Lai and Ulrika Drinkall, thank you for being with us. Many of you were with us last couple of years for the golf. I hope you enjoyed the slideshow there, and thought the pictures of you were flattering enough. For obvious reasons, we couldn't do the golf this year. When I say obvious reasons, what I mean is the golf course didn't have enough of those scoring pencils with adequate erasers to accommodate this crew. Oh my God, last year I thought we sufficiently cheated, but apparently not with this group. So anyway, no erasers, no golf for you. As much as we'd all like to be together, Zoom allows us this time. We're grateful for that and the opportunity not to have to put pants on. We'll keep the program moving because many of you have Netflix series you haven't finished yet. and we want to be respectful of your Saturday evening needs. Before we get going, a huge thank you to our very loyal sponsors. I'm going to quickly read through them, and we thank them so much. Wellspire Advisors, Winston Preparatory School, Burton Real Estate, American School for the Deaf, Eagle Hill School, Cleanwell, Elk Street Management, the law offices of Neil Rosenberg, Dana Johnson Law, Fusion Academy, Villa Maria School, Shrub Oak International School, Levitt First, Hoffman Landscapes, Skyer Law, Hornig Law, Connecticut Education Advocacy, Jill Chuckus and Virginia Blum, the law offices of Terry Bedard, the law offices of Lawrence Berliner, Early Insight Advocacy, Feinstein Education Law Group, Michael Gilberg Esquire, The Impeccable Nanny, Piper Paul Law, and this one's a little awkward. A special thanks to Kendra Farn and P. Guerin Productions for the video that you're going to see tonight. Years ago, I became friendly with Ulrika Drinkall's husband, Tim, when a bunch of guys got together to play some basketball. That part of the relationship is probably better off forgotten. But a much more memorable, better part of the relationship, my wife, Kendra, and I got to know the couple. We got to know them much better at a fundraiser put on by a child advocacy organization. And I remember saying at the time, there's no way to prepare yourself for the news that you're going to have or do have a child with special needs. It's a real punch to the gut. But for those of us who have gotten that blow, we have to quickly turn the page and learn how best to advocate for our children. There's a lot to navigate, and it's really hard. It's really hard for those of us with all sorts of resources. Well, Ulrika and Christine, two undeterred, courageous women, teamed up for the good of special needs children throughout our whole state to create S.E.L.F, Special Education Legal Fund. Christine and Ulrika had the intellect, the drive, and economic resources to advocate for their children in their own home. But they are not forgetting about the children who don't have those same resources throughout our state. And so, Christine, let's talk about it a little. Enough of me already. Your organization, S.E.L.F, raises money to help people get the best for their kids. I know, listen, the fight never ends. But tell us a success story. I know you've had many, but give us an idea of a success story and how it moved you.
That's a great question, Noah. There's so many of them. In the last 2 years, we have given just about $275,000 in grants for 60 families in 27 school districts in Connecticut and Westchester County. And that $275,000 over the past 2 years has yielded educational improvements of over $1.6 million. When I talk about educational improvements, I'm talking about paraprofessionals, extra therapy, outplacement support, transportation, things that these children needed but didn't have before we were able to help them with the advocacy process. So, broadly speaking, that is what the successes look like in total. Specifically, it's so hard to, to talk about any specific family, but one of our first families that came to us, their child, 6 years old, on the autism spectrum, largely nonverbal, and not really getting the support that he needed in school. His mother was getting called every day. It was, rare that, that this boy would be able to stay an entire day in school. And with the help of, the grant that we were able to give this family, and with the help of the attorney that they were then able to hire, they were able to secure an outplacement for their child at an appropriate school for him. That's, a great end to the story. But, the better end to the story is because her son, her one of 5 children, was now able to spend a complete day in school, she was able to get a job. And she decided that because she had experience with her son as a child with autism with special needs, she was going to work as a bus monitor in the school district and help other kids that needed that support on the bus in the morning and in the evening. And she could still be there for her son and for her other children at the end of the day. So that, was one of my most favorite, my most favorite stories, because not only is the child's life changed, but the mother's life has changed as well as the entire family.
It's the domino effect in the positive way. Just, have you ever kind of given it a second thought about what would happen to these children and then subsequently to the families if they didn't get the support?
Well, it's so hard to be a parent. And it's doubly hard to be a parent of a child with special needs. I know from my own experience, my eyes are always on him. That's actually how I can tell when I'm out in public whether a child has special needs. I never look at the child. I look at the parent, because the parent it is always looking at their child, at their son, at their daughter, to make sure that things are right, things are okay, that their child's safe. And so I think about that all the time, that the effect of this this gift, this grant, is multifaceted, because it enables the child to go to school. It enables, I can't tell you, I've been there. I have been there when I could not. Every day I dropped my son off at school and I prayed that he would make it through the morning, not to say anything about the day. I just prayed that he would get through noon without me getting a phone call and having to go pick him up. So, and I know the dread that comes when you look at your cell phone and you see the school's number. I know I'm still not over it. I still get a call, even if I know it's a snow day and I have a mini, PTSD panic attack. So, being able to alleviate that is a huge gift, and that we're grateful to be able to give.
And I remember once being in a seminar on how to advocate for your children through the school system. And this was very early for me when my child was very young. And one parent asked a question and said she was from the Norwalk school system. And the person who was conducting the seminar said, well, the best thing you can do is move. And it was a harsh answer, but probably an honest answer. And while it may have been sound advice, not everybody has the ability to just pick up and move their family. And so that's why I think what you guys are doing is so wonderful, because you guys aren't just dealing with one community. We're dealing with many communities here, and some communities that really aren't giving to the kids what they're legally obligated to do so.
No, that's true. But I would say, Noah, that it's important to remember that even though, there, obviously there are districts that, are better funded than others, districts that have better resources than others, failure happens in every district. Failure happens in Bridgeport, failure happens in Westport, failure happens in Darien, it happens in Greenwich. I have a family in one of those districts, not Bridgeport, that, after the schools closed in March, they didn't hear from their school-based team until Mother's Day. And this mother was emailing every week for her 2 autistic children that were nonverbal, and they heard nothing from the school district. So failure happens everywhere.
Well, do you find that being the case, that you guys have put the schools and the districts on notice that there is an advocacy group out there that's going to make them stick to their legal obligations?
I mean, I would hope so. I would hope so, but I don't, flatter myself or the organization. Listen, we're a small nonprofit organization. We do what we can. We help the families that are slipping through the cracks. The institutional issues that are, at play here are, I'm not smart enough to solve them. They're too big for someone like me, someone like us, for Ulrika and I to really deal with. What we're trying to do is catch those families, that are slipping through the cracks. We're the insurer of last resort. We're trying to be there when a child has been failed by the school district, is has had an IEP for 7 years, is 14 and still can't read. You know, those are the cases that we're trying to rectify. You know,
the strain on the family is so tremendous. And you mentioned IEP, and for anybody who's been in an IEP or a PPP meeting, it's really overwhelming for the most educated of those within the system. It's the people are speaking another language.
Yeah.
You're trying to keep up. You're trying to make sure you're looking out for your child while at the same time understanding what's being said to you. For some of the people that you guys are helping, for some of the families for whom you're advocating, that English may not even be their first language. So not only are they getting the advocacy that you guys are providing, whether it be with an attorney or you or somebody who knows the system, but just that emotional support of having somebody there to hold their hand and walk them through. How have you seen that not only help, but just relieve the tension that must come with every family going through this process?
You know, so Special Education Legal Fund was an idea that, you know, Ulrika and I had, and we, you know, sort of thought about it, had it popping around in our brain for years. And then a few years ago, I went to a PPT meeting for a friend, and English is not her first language. And so I met her at the school. She had all of her papers still in the envelopes that they were mailed to her in. She hadn't taken them out of them. And when we went into the meeting, I'll never forget, because the school, everybody in the school team was already there. There were 5 people in there. She didn't speak English. She was supposed to have a translator. They didn't have one. And I will never forget the look of just abject terror on her face. And then I was thinking, to be that person and to walk into the room by yourself. 40% of our families speak English as a second language. 62% of our families are headed by a single parent, usually a mother. I mean, always a mother in our case. And so I can't tell you, the burden that it lifts off of a parent's shoulders to have someone in the room with you that's on your side. My husband and I were fortunate in that, we had advocacy resources available to us really from the very beginning of our struggle. And even after, I sort of, kind of figured out what was going on and could probably do the meetings by myself, I continued to bring this attorney with us to meetings.
Yeah.
Because I needed someone to talk while I was trying to get myself under control.
Right.
While I was trying to keep myself from crying. That was the only reason sometimes that I brought this person with me. I knew the law at that point, but
I think all of us who have been through some sort of IEP or any one piece of this process, we have stories that we can tell. And it's not because people are bad people, but I think what happens within the school system is there are legal obligations to perform. And then there are what has just come to be a precedent that is set at the school for what they do. And it doesn't always mesh up. It doesn't always live up to those legal obligations. Right. So what kind of reception have you guys received from the schools, from teachers, from parents overall? Because I'm sure everyone wants to be doing the right thing. These are children after all, and we all want to do the right thing for children. But what have you received in feedback?
I mean, most people want to do the right thing. You're absolutely right, Noah. The problem is that, these are legal mandates. These are civil rights that were never funded by the federal government. So the cost of that disproportionately falls on the states and local municipalities, who have to shoulder both the growing cost of educating these children and the growing population itself. We can talk about the rising incidence of autism, but it's true, pretty much across the board for children with developmental disabilities, learning disabilities across, all diagnoses. So, that broadly speaking is, the problem. I always talk about, the special ed department in our town like a boat, that has a bunch of holes in it. And there's only a limited number of corks. So what we're doing, like, really is moving the corks around to the holes that leak the most. And unfortunately, that's the case. You asked about, parents. I mean, the reception from parents has been, tremendous. We, very rarely does a day go by that, a parent doesn't reach out to me, whether it's for an application for a grant or just for some assistance in understanding the process, or just for some guidance as to where they are and where they should be. When the schools closed in March, all of us were, really shell-shocked. Our families, the school districts, teachers, everyone. So for the first few weeks, nothing was happening. The school districts weren't meeting. Parents had no idea what to do. They didn't know how to implement their plans. And, and as we started, and then as the year progressed, and we realized that, this wasn't a temporary stoppage. It wasn't just 2 weeks and we were going to be back. It wasn't 3 weeks. It wasn't 4 weeks. It wasn't a month. The calls started to come again. And when we finally, and really the floodgates opened in, late April, early May. And, I was just, getting calls, emails, applications, every day. And we really, we can't fund all the applications that we receive. We can't fund all of the requests that we have, that we get. And, to turn away a family where, they've been struggling in the midst of this pandemic with a child that is, regressing every day because of the lack of instruction, these are the worst things I've ever had to do, is to make those calls and send those emails.
We're in crazy times now, obviously. I think that the school administrators have had to stand on their heads simply to provide learning opportunities, whether it be distance learning or classroom opportunities for kids, and everyone's trying to make it happen. But there was a headline just recently in the Greenwich Time about where they're falling short, or where they're falling short most, is in special education, which means that this time right now, what we're going through right now is even more crucial than it has been, because the stakes are too high. You can't let them fall back on that, right? We have to be as vigilant as ever.
A lot of these kids, Noah, are, eligible for not 9 months school, but 12 months of school. Like, a lot of these kids are eligible for what's called extended school year services. So they not only lost the 3 months of school from March until June, but they lost the school year that would have bridged their summer learning program, because these are children that have been determined to regress too far during the summer to go the entire time without instruction. And so, when we talk about, what's happened with, the pandemic, the pandemic's exposed a lot of things. The pandemic has exposed, the gaps in special education that you are speaking of. These children have broader gaps. That's why they're in special education. And the gaps are wider now because of the pandemic, and they're not going to be as easily rectified. But the pandemic has also exposed some things about the education system in general. And what is really exposed, and what has been very upsetting to me, because this is where my families, it comes together on my families, is the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic has been tremendous for all families. But if you are a family with special education needs, and you also have limited resources, you are in very, very difficult straits.
These are things that we don't think about too, right? So we're talking about the schools and the 12-month gap, and not just 9 months, and where the schools are falling short, but there are a lack of resources in areas that we may take for granted. Internet connection, for instance.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's
so
absolutely right.
How are we advocating in that way?
Listen,
to make sure that the schools are providing for what children are able to do
right
at home.
Well, the schools are supposed to provide the access, and in many cases, the schools were really bending over backwards to provide Chromebooks, to provide hotspots. But the thing about the Chromebooks is, a lot of the districts weren't able to roll out the distribution of Chromebooks immediately. Some districts didn't get to their elementary school students until early May. And a hotspot is by definition, a help. It is, it enables you to get some internet access, but it doesn't enable you to Zoom. Really, it doesn't have the broadband capability of that. So a lot of these families still couldn't check in, and for some of these families, if they didn't check in, if their child didn't log in, they were considered truant. And if they're considered truant and they've been considered truant and absent for a number of days, then DCF gets called. And so you get into this spiral, and that's happened in a number of cases all over Connecticut. It's happened nationally. There was a case in Wisconsin that people have been talking about. And so that's, one thing. I had a mother who, she spent her stimulus check on, 5 Kindles for her kids because she couldn't wait for the district to get the Chromebook to her, and her kids needed to be online. The other thing is that, in the districts that didn't have, a Zoom capability or weren't doing online instruction like that, a lot of them were emailing packets to the parents to, so the child would, they would, print out the packet and the child would do the packet. And then, that would be the work for the week. But what if you don't have a printer? Most of these families don't have computers at home and don't have printers. And their access to computers and printers comes at the local library, all of which were closed during the pandemic, some of which are still closed to that. I actually wasn't aware of this myself until families started, calling me for applications, and my, reaction would be to email them an application, but that doesn't do them any good if they can't print it out, fill it out, and then, get it back to me. So these are all things that, for families with children in special education who have limited resources, it really was a perfect storm. And we're still not out of that storm yet.
And it creates a greater need for what you guys are doing. So I have to ask, you and Ulrika have had your hands full at home and taking care of what's going on in your household and navigating this system to get what's best for your special needs child. What is it that made you guys say, we are going to help everyone else around us? Where did that come from when you have your hands so full? I just have so much respect for the people who are not only fighting for their own family, but fighting for those people who they've never even met.
That's a good question. I mean, it really just was a terrible injustice. I remember, sitting through, we started this process on, actually I remember the day exactly. It was November 5th of 2009, which was the day that my son had to leave his independent preschool and matriculate into our district elementary schools, November 5th. And when we walked into that school, that started a process that took 18 months. And 18 months of that was, constant meetings and calling and showing up at school and, meeting and, and all the while, you're getting called every day to pick up your child. You still don't know exactly what's going on with your child. You have, numerous doctor's appointments, therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, you're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at this all at the same time. And so, this process, for us lasted, about 18 months. And, when it was, quote, over, I remember walking out of the Board of Education building, actually. And my husband looked at me and he said, we've won. Aren't you happy? We've won. And I said, and I didn't feel happy at all, actually. I felt that, I felt upset and really just appalled that someone would have to go through what we went through, expend the resources that we did in order to make it happen. And that there are so many other families that couldn't do what we did. They couldn't even begin to do what we did. And that was really, that was really the start of it for me, and when I met Ulrika, several years later, or a couple years later, it was really a meeting of the minds, because we were just such kindred spirits and had similar experiences, almost exactly the same experience, and almost everybody you meet in this like little fraternity, as it were, has had a similar experience.
Well, I so respect what you guys are doing in helping others who may not have the same resources. In the news business, we have a saying, don't tell me, show me. And while you have been great sharing these stories and enlightening us on what you guys do, and you have become such experts in this field, we do have that aforementioned video that shows what you guys are able to do, and with the help and generosity of all of those who are attending this and other supporters of S.E.L.F, how we are able to help so many different people. So with that said, let's watch that video and get a good look at S.E.L.F in action.
We'll read these stories, and one is usually just more heartbreaking than the next.
What do you think, Will?
Yeah. We found out that William had Down syndrome when I was 18 or 19 weeks pregnant, which hit me, like completely threw me off. And around 20 weeks, I found out he had a hole in the heart. And then at 7 weeks old, he went into heart failure. We started really having the bladder issues. It's been an ongoing thing, really, probably the last 6 years.
I'm too fast. Oh, you're too fast for us.
Preschool was wonderful, and then we stayed on at the same school for kindergarten, and that's really where everything went wrong. There was artwork on the wall of all the children, except for William, and I said, well, where's Will's work? And the teacher said, oh, well, we were drawing houses and he couldn't do it. So that's kind of how kindergarten went. He's nonverbal. This is my biggest fear, my biggest worry with William, because he is nonverbal.
S.E.L.F was the organization that made the recommendations for the advocate. She knows all the players in the district. She knows all the players at the state. The grant financially has just meant one other thing that we don't have to worry about. Advocates, lawyers, those services aren't in your average household budget.
She's been brilliant. Obviously she looked at Will's IEP and right off the bat was like, this is terrible. And she said, right, we're going to write a letter to the state. She told us exactly what we needed to do, what we needed to write. She has the knowledge that I don't have, and it would have taken me a lot longer, and I probably may have even given up, to be honest. I get very emotional. I will go into meetings and I will sit there and I'll end up crying because that's my child, and I get very, very upset about it. It's been amazing having her, and I feel confident now moving forward with what I know that William deserves.
Some children literally cannot digitally learn.
For families with kids who have special needs, this is terrible, like disastrous, catastrophic.
Whatever he could do, he would press the computer and turn it off, or whatever he could do so he didn't have to be on a screen. He basically did. It was very, very challenging. He wanted nothing to do with it.
So you gave up?
So I gave up.
The parent cannot be the teacher. The parent cannot be the special education instructor. The parent cannot be a paraprofessional. The parent is not a therapist. So for a child with special education needs, it's really almost impossible to learn in that kind of setting. The gaps that have developed because of the school closure, because of remote learning, distance learning, whatever you want to call it, those are greater and deeper for children in special education, and they are much, much, much more difficult to rectify. This is a program designed to provide really a groundbreaking special education, civics education, and communication curriculum for families that speak English as a second language. It's free.
Sometimes with the ESL, you may have a socioeconomic issue. You can have cultural issues.
A room full of families who all have something in common. They're here because they care about their child, and their child is not getting what he or she deserves.
The community aspect of Proyecto, the hand-holding, the sharing, is even more important than the information we're giving these parents.
We've since expanded the program to include several other languages, including Arabic, French, Portuguese, Creole, Mandarin Chinese. Because it's online, it is accessible in a much, much greater format, than that. And we've been able to reach families all over the state of Connecticut, outside of Fairfield County, in New York and beyond. And that has been really a tremendous opportunity that we're grateful for.
I think the best thing about S.E.L.F. is that it does exactly what the mission says in a real way. It levels the playing field. It's a very real way to help people.
To see the need and to be able to catch some of these families that have been slipping through the cracks.
Just as simple as going with a mom to a meeting and translating and holding their hands. And a lot of the parents I work with are single moms.
I've worked with some of the clients, and we've been fortunate to have some amazing results. In that, giving the family a voice is key. We speak the same language, we just use different words.
You push, you advocate, you never give up, you never believe that there's a limit to their potential. But at the end of the day, helping them be happy is what success is.
I just love watching that, because you really are helping people, and it's moving to see how much you guys are helping people just out of pure will. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to ask everybody now to do what I typically tell my children exactly not to do, and that is to get out their cell phones. And you should be getting a text message that will have instructions, a message with instructions on how you can kind of make this next section of what we're doing here, being part of what we're doing here. So we're encouraging donations from everyone here, so that we can continue to help at least as many people as we've been helping. And Christine, we talked about the need for the services you're offering during this pandemic. What have been some of the financial hurdles that the pandemic is throwing in your mission's way?
Well, we're facing the same hurdles that any other nonprofit organization is facing at this time. We've been very fortunate, and for the last 2 years, we have generated, substantially all of the funding that has supported our grants program through a fall fundraising event, which obviously involves a gathering of people. We weren't able to do that this year, and so, like many other organizations, like ours, not like ours, we've had to, to pivot and to try to figure out, how we can continue to support the even greater need that we see now during this pandemic, and also how we can continue to, support those families, how we can continue to reach new supporters and new friends. But it's hard because, lawyers are expensive. Our average grant size is $5,000. But, to go to mediation, which is a place that you would need to go legally as a parent in order to secure an outplacement agreement for your child, if that's what you're looking for, can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. A due process hearing can cost upwards of $50,000. These are not expenses that are in your average, family's budget, as Christian, the father in the video, was sharing with us. It is, so we give a grant that averages around $5,000, and we give about 30 grants like that a year, which, if you are not a math major as I am, is about $150,000. That's what we've been able to do the last 2 years, and we've been really, really fortunate that we've been able to do that. This year, I don't know. This is a brand new this is a brand new world for all of us. And, you know, whatever we do, whatever we, you know, whatever steps we take from here, you know, we're going to try to help as many families as possible.
We have up on the screen for everyone to see our goal of $100,000, and the number is slowly climbing towards that. So whatever anybody can do to help us reach that goal. And while people are doing that, Christine, just so people know how the money is allocated, where it's going, tell us about how many applications you will get and about how many people you've been able to help. So I you know, not being the math major, I was able to know that the $5,000 grants and $150,000, but there are a lot more people who are coming to you at this time.
I mean, generally speaking, we get about twice as many applications as grants that we can fund. That's certainly been the case in recent months. You know, there's a seasonality to this business, believe it or not. This spring is, you know, sort of the tax season for, you know, for special education. It's the busy season. And this spring we were shut down. You know, everyone was, you know, was at standstill. And I know that there's still so much pent up demand and so many meetings that didn't happen, and, you know, IEPs that weren't updated, and evaluations that had to cease, and, you know, mediations, you know, can continue to go through. But, you know, so I really do think that, you know, this fall, we're going to see this proverbial pig in a python, you know, and in the last few weeks, I've had, you know, families that have reached out to me in June when we were closed for applications. And they reach out to me again in July, and again in August, and again, you know, and early this week. And I just have to keep telling them, you know, just wait a little longer, which is a, you know, a horrible, you know, sort of position and feeling to be in. You know, just wait a little longer. And, you know, maybe we can help you.
It's got to be really hard to turn people away. And if you know, if we don't get to our goal, there's going to be more people turned away. I mean, I can only imagine that's got to be heart-wrenching.
It is. It's not fun, Noah. But, you know, we are, you know, listen, like I get it, you know, you know, everyone is struggling in this new world. You know, after after the schools closed, I reached out to, you know, pretty much all of our clients during the March, you know, April period, not because I had any words of wisdom really, but just because I wanted to know what was going on and how people were doing. And about half of them had either had COVID themselves or lost their job because of COVID. And, you know, that is so, you know, during that time, you know, a lot of what I was doing was trying to help them run down resources like, you know, rent relief and ways to pay their electric bills and stuff like that. And, you know, and what food banks were available, were available to them in the area. And so I feel that, you know, this is a problem that, you know, for these families, you know, we're just getting our arms around as we enter, you know, the school season. I mean, a lot of us, our kids have gone back to school, you know, for like a day, 2 days, 3 days. And I really, you know, I know that we're just getting our arms around it now because, you know, the emails and the calls, you know, keep coming.
Well, listen, I'm seeing the numbers go up, and I really just want to thank everybody for their generosity and continued generosity. We have our goal to get to of 100,000. Today isn't the only day to give. We have this campaign at least open. But you know, the organization is always open to taking donations from generous people.
I know, I like saying that, like, you know, this will be open till Monday. I mean, you know, we're a nonprofit. We always, you know, we're always taking donations, you know, money is always good. But it is important now more than ever. And why, you know, this particular campaign is important is because, you know, on Tuesday, you know, I'm going to start accepting grants again. and we are going to have to figure out exactly how many families with what resources we can hope to support over the course of, the coming year. We are, our last 2 years, the budget has been $150,000, which has resulted in, 30 grants of, around $5,000 each. And we're not, at that level at this particular point. So, the struggle becomes, who are you going to help, and how, and, where can your dollars be most effective? And that's a difficult thing for, an organization that is used to, providing, the direct support to its, to its families. It's really hard to look families in the eye and tell them that you won't be able to help them, this time around.
Well, you guys, you mentioned it before, the golf tournament in Gala has always been a great fundraiser for you, and for obvious reasons, we couldn't do it this year. So it's even more important for everyone to help out as much as they possibly can now, so that we can keep what you guys are doing moving forward, because it really is such a great cause. And for anybody who has been through this process of navigating your way through the special education and advocating for your child, man, it is not easy. There's so much there. And to be able to go out and help people, you guys are doing great work. And with the generosity of everybody with us today and everybody who's familiar with it, I hope that you can continue doing it as best you can everywhere. So thank you again to everybody who has reached into their wallets and helped us out today. And hopefully we'll continue to bring some more in.
And thank you so much, Noah. I know that, it means a lot, that you and Kendra have been such great supporters of ours over the years. Kendra has continued to outdo herself. This video this time was amazing. And, no one really looks into our heart and sees our mission the way that she does. And so I thank you both for the support that you've given us over the last couple of years. We definitely wouldn't be here without you.
We're so appreciative of what you're doing for, for all the people that can use your help. And you and Ulrika are just really, I just have so much respect for what you're doing. And obviously when you look at the number on the thermometer get higher, we're not the only ones who think that way. So.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This was obviously our first virtual gala. And I think that it was a huge success because, we had a great time. We raised money for families in need with children in special education in Connecticut and Westchester County. Noah didn't have to wear pants, so we're all winners.
Wonderful.
Thank you to everyone's generosity. Thanks to you, we can continue to provide the resources and knowledge and support to families that desperately need that help in Connecticut and in Westchester County. So thank you so much.